special guest,
President Pleasant.
This is the Power Motion Picnic Hour.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Power Motion Picnic Hour. As always, I'm your host, Dave, and as always, with me is...
Trevor.
Hey. How's it going? How you doing this week?
I'm doing fantastic.
Oh, man, what a week.
It's been a big one. Really monumental week in the Power Motion Picnic Hour.
In our small world, this is a really big week.
Yes, where we can celebrate milestones that most people would find at best unimportant, if not totally inconsequential. Things like Tom Bosworth liking one of our posts about him.
In the middle of what I think was a big week, that might have been the highlight of the week.
It was I mean, we celebrate such victories because Tom Bosworth, to be clear, now that we know he's a listener, is an inspirational ambulator, if that's a word.
That's a word.
Yeah, we celebrate all types of ambulation, and that's what our community mile is going to be all about. That's what the show's all about. We're trying to get there, sort of varying guests and sort of going deep into different types of ambulation.
Tom Bosworth, for anyone who doesn't remember last week's episode, which I don't know how you could forget, but if you forget last week's episode, Tom Bosworth is the world record holder in race walking, 5:31.08. Tom Bosworth is an Olympian. Tom Bosworth liked our post about Tom Bosworth on Instagram, and Tom Bosworth is likely now a listener to the Power Motion Picnic Hour. And
so welcome, Tom.
Welcome.
We are fans.
And I was thinking maybe Tom Bosworth will want to come participate in the community mile.
That would be awesome. I mean, we extend the invite. He did like that specific post. We included him, and we, as another reminder, not that it's necessary, but we have a few different categories. Maybe it's sort of like a choose your own category sort of finish. It could be like we talked about. If you want to do a time-based goal, you can go for a Bosworth mile, a Bosworth walking mile, which is right around 5:30. Can you go faster than that? You're either faster or slower than Tom Bosworth, running as he is walking, or you could go if you prefer for did you have fun?
Yeah, that's a great way to judge, and that's a great way to judge anything. Last week I suggested that we have the two categories you could finish in at the mile, either faster than or slower than Tom Bosworth. Mm-hmm. But I think nothing would please me more than if Tom came and race walked a 5:31, anything in that realm, right? Something around 5:31, and every other participant tried their hardest running and lost to Tom Bosworth. That would be my favorite outcome of the community mile.
It would really be incredible.
That being said, yeah,
and I mean, I'm trying to think of who. Well, if special guest Pierce shows up, it will be a tight race. My
dream finish of everybody running losing to Tom walking is possible.
I think that would be cool. I think we'll eventually have a wheelchair racer. That's a category of racer and runner that would absolutely destroy all of us too in the mile. A good wheelchair runner. And I do these presentations at school sometimes, talking about this, and I ask the kids, first graders or second graders, do you know why the wheelchair racers go out first? And usually there's one smart kid that has the answer, which is they're much faster than the other runners. And they would completely take out the other runners.
That proportion of one smart kid per classroom is about how it works out through all of society. There's about one smart person out of that many people.
It's a microcosm of really the world.
Yeah. I love watching a wheelchair marathoner come out of the gates, especially when it's something like the Boston Marathon that starts downhill. And so they just come out flying.
So fast.
So fast. But then the only thing better than that is and this is probably less frequent, but like sometimes, and it usually maybe the winners of the Boston Marathon will be like this, that they get to the finish or they get to like Heartbreak Hill still just like pumping away super aggressively.
Yeah.
Just still so fast, going uphill so fast.
Yeah, sustained efforts.
Yeah.
Like super fast. And the women's winner of this year's Boston Marathon in the wheelchair division had a mechanical issue at some point, like on like mile, I don't know, 16 or 17, had to pull over, take a wheel off, and like mess with the chair.
I saw that. It was actually earlier. It was like,
it was earlier.
It was in like Framingham, I think.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was pretty early, just a couple miles in, but she was already way ahead. she like,
and she
no one caught up to her. Yeah. No one caught up to her while she was doing it. Because that's how ahead she was.
She was so far ahead. She'd go on to win, and running is so individual. It's just all about yourself. I remember she was a little bit disappointed in the effort. She had hoped to do better. And that's,
Yep.
you know, I think the old school way of thinking about that is, well, you're not being very like nice to your competition. Mm-hmm. But I think another way of thinking about it, maybe more modern, is like she was, you know, her gauge and her measure in that case was like herself. She wanted to do her best, and she didn't feel like she did her best. Like,
yeah, she was only racing against herself. I saw that interview, and it was amazing because she had just won the Boston Marathon, and she was not very happy.
It's a pretty big swagger there too.
Yeah, like she knew she was gonna win. Like most people, if they win, like they're happy.
That's
and then
some swag. Yeah.
Yeah, she knew even if with the problem, she knew she was gonna win. She wasn't like, well, I'm glad I won, considering I had all these issues.
Yeah. Well, I didn't mean to take us so horribly off track, although
I knew that was going to happen at some point.
In this case, we were actually talking about running and different types of running, which is, and we did acknowledge, I think we had a realization this week that we need some broader representation on the show from, you know, we're hoping, of course, to represent the female running community. We did get a non-binary guest, but we want to really branch out into the ambulatory world.
Yep, exactly. We need as much diversity as we can get. Representation is very important.
It's very important to the Power Motion Picnic Hour.
Yeah, I think
society at large.
I think it's important in society at large to be able to see yourself, no matter what kind of person you are, to see yourself represented in as many different ways as possible, to know how many options there are out there for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, I know how important the Beastie Boys were to me. And an important representation
as a young Jewish man from the Bronx. Yeah. So I guess, I mean, usually we start with Week in Running. Do we want to go there? Do we want to go dive into the mailbag? What do you got? What did you get this week?
Well, we got a mailbag question for you, because we need to talk about Week in Running. You just did the Presidential Traverse, and we had our longtime listener wrote in that she needs to know what brand of baby food pouches were used for the mashed potatoes that you brought on the Presidential Traverse. I see you have one with you.
I have one. I just took it out of the gear shed. It's a Kirakoo. That's Kirecoo. And it's a strange word. It's a company that I did some research on, as in a Google search and an Amazon search. And
that counts as research these days, at least according to most Americans.
But none of what I'm about to say was generated by a large language model or any sort of generative AI. It's all real. But so these food pouch bags, and it's called a reusable food pouch by Kirakoo, were given to me by Coach Friend, who used them for, I think, like actual baby food for his daughter, like I don't know, 19 years ago. She's going off to college. So these baby food bags have gotten a lot of miles, both sort of literally and figuratively. And he was using them for ultra stuff like sweet potatoes and chia, and like what I did for the Prezi, which was just some heavily salted, like sort of watered down with almond milk mashed potatoes. And then he would go on to to give me a couple of those that he's had forever. The unfortunate end to this story is Kirikou is no longer in the food pouch game.
Yeah.
So they seem to have changed strategy. They're now doing baby spoons and forks, and also those like things that hold drapes, like the little hook things. So they've sort of diversified, but unfortunately they're no longer doing food pouches.
So I guess the search for a decent ultra marathoning food pouch continues.
Yes, but I for our dear listener, we literally would not be here without her. I found some Kirikous on Mercari, which is sort of like a eBay-like type site or application or whatever.
Yeah, I bought a shirt there once that didn't fit.
Nice. I sold a bunch of records on there.
Oh yeah, I remember when you did that. It was great.
Yeah, it was fun. So I also sold a train cake pan.
As one does. Just another Saturday, just another train cake pan sold on Mercari.
Nordic Wear, future sponsor Nordic Wear.
Somebody's got to take Bobo's place. I'm sure they did something to offend us this week.
So anyway, like I'm gonna buy these Kirikous. I found some vintage Kirikous, and I'm going to ship them to our dear listener. If she could just make sure we have the correct address, write in.
Please write into the mailbag, and that's how it goes in the Power Motion Picnic Hour. You don't even realize you're entering a contest, and the next thing you know, you've won the contest.
You've won.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like Song of the Week last week.
Sneaks up on you.
Our artist Song of the Week, just honored by the acknowledgement, and would go on to say he runs too, which is exciting. All right, so mailbag, I got one for you.
Oh, okay, I'm ready.
This might be it, but let's see.
Yeah, short week.
From one of our beloved listeners in New Hampshire, my mom, she says,
great.
Listening to 1.4, that's in reference to, I don't know, maybe you could look it up, but...
what episode is 1.4? I think I remember that one. It's 1.4 is it was my initial favorite episode. It was called like Irreverence, I believe.
Irreverence, okay.
Yeah, I remember all the episodes.
So this is a bit of a throwback to 1.4. She says that she worked in an elementary school for 25 years and never once heard any of the kids say that they were monkeying around. She said that at one point in episode 1.4, you say monkeying around, as the kids would say. And she wants to know, is that a new kids expression?
Oh, I hope so. I think when I say, usually if I say something as the kids might say, I'm trying to like trick people into thinking that I'm still like in touch with what kids are saying. And so I say as the kids would say, when really it's just me saying something that either no one has said in, since before World War I, or
it's like you're just taking out a quick insurance policy on the thing that you just said that might not have been been very cool.
Yeah, it wasn't cool, and it probably didn't make sense. But then if I said as the kids would say, because our listeners, I mean, what's our youngest listener? 28. So nobody, in other words, nobody knows what the kids say, except maybe teachers.
Nobody knows.
Parents.
But we can still hedge our statements with that qualifier, as the kids might say.
Like parents and teachers, but that's not the in crowd with a kid, and a parent or a teacher.
So if you're a listener, even if you don't receive a Kirikou food pouch this week, which is reserved for a select single listener, you can still use this in your lives. You can still, at the end of a sentence that you might mildly regret, you can say, just as the kids would say.
Yeah.
Go ahead and apply that, and it's our gift to you.
Yeah, and if you're a listener who happens to also be a kid, and you do use the phrase monkeying around, please write in to let us know, and please use it in a sentence. so that we know that you're not just monkeying around with us, and that we know that it's true and we're not being messed with.
Yeah. So
that's a good mailbag this week.
That's what I got for mailbag. Yeah,
it's a good mailbag this week. Yeah, it's mostly about running.
It's mostly
just like the show.
So what else? I mean, I guess we can do weekend running.
Yeah, I guess I'll do mine first real quick, just because I think you had a much more interesting week in running. But yeah, I had a nice week in running. I ran a New York Roadrunners 5-mile race on Saturday morning.
Oh, an 8K.
I ran 5 miles around Central Park, and this was pretty fun because we got there. I ran with our female gear testing a colleague who tested out our Zero sandals, and I was running with her, and we got there very late. And so I didn't make it up to Corral E in time to run with Corral E.
Oh, nice. So you ran with, what is it? Is it T?
It goes back, the last one's L, and I think we might have been in L. I'm not even sure where we were. By the time we got there, it was moving already. So I think we were further back from my corral and even further back from hers. And so I just ran with her for a while because it was very crowded, and I didn't feel like blowing by a million people and just and just trying to run by every single person. So I just kind of ran. I ran slow. I ran.
Best.
It was fun. I ran a really, really, really easy first 4, and then I just ran a really hard last mile.
Nice.
Yeah, because by then it had opened up a little bit, so that was a lot of fun.
Do you get your split? No, I guess there's no way to get your splits. You get yours unless you use some modern fancy technology like a watch or an app. The race isn't giving you splits.
No, but I do know
start and end.
I do know how far ahead of her I finished, and so I finished because we were running together, and then I took off, and so I finished like 2 minutes 15 seconds before her.
It'd be good to. I'm wondering what that mile time was. That's a great condition to run a fast. It's a great sort of setting to run a really fast mile after you've run a really slow,
really slow 4,
3 or 4, to then just crank it. I wonder if you Bosworthed.
I don't think I did. But I mean, and I have no idea really what I ran. I don't
think you did, but I wonder if
it might have been under 7.
I wonder if you got under 7.
Yeah, it felt like I might have been, but I really have no idea. As we've covered in past episodes, we'll call it a 6:15. Yeah,
we'll call it 6:15. Yeah, that works.
But no, it was really fun, and there was a big crowd at the end and a lot of cheering, and so it was just a really fun race. So that was over the weekend, and it didn't even get too hot, so it wasn't even bad out there.
Nice.
And then yesterday, I just did a nice run from where I live along the Hudson River down to the Battery, and right down to the ferry terminal for the Statue of Liberty and back. And I don't know how far that was. I didn't even measure it. It's probably like 6 miles or something, like a 10K about. But on the way back, I did some improvised strides for speed.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How'd it go?
Good. I mean, I have no idea how fast I was going, but I just tried to replicate the feeling of what I was doing on the treadmill.
I mean, honestly, I think there's been a lot of advice sort of tossed around loosely, but I think at the end of the day, the running that you're doing by feel is with some of this sort of vague structure, go fast for bursts and then slow back down. I think doing it by feel, with your body, might actually be the best way.
It was very fun to do, actually. Yeah. That was actually a really great run, just running along. I love running along the river. So yeah, doing kind of the mellow run down to the Battery. Too. Yeah. And then on the way back, so 3 miles kind of mellow, and then not too fast. And then 3 miles strides for speed.
That's where, when I'm doing that, sometimes I'll choose some sort of landmark in the distance, be I'm going to run fast to that point, or sometimes I'll count in my head a little bit, but probably not at exactly the right
yeah
time. But more than counting, I like to either listen to some music, let that sort of go for a period, find a visual landmark, or sometimes this cool thing about running in the woods and stuff is you can just go based on the landscape that you're moving over and the terrain. So you can be I'm going to go fast down this hill, and then I'm going to slow it down, That running by feel is the best, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I like that a lot too. And then what I did was something similar to running by feel, which was I was running based on like how congested it was in different points by the river. So I was like, okay, this is a good point. I can kind of go faster now, and I'm not gonna, knock people over and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that was like for me the Brooklyn 5K that we did was some crazy running because there were so many people. Like I'm usually running with nobody, and like around nobody, and then there was just like thousands of people.
It's pretty great. Yeah. And I really enjoy doing that. That's one of my favorite things about running these New York Roadrunners races. But anyway, we should move on to your weekend running because you ran the Presidential Traverse.
I did. I completed the Presidential Traverse up in New Hampshire, and it was just a ton of fun. Just so grateful to have been able to go and do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you sent me a great picture of yourself after you finished it. It looked pretty amazing.
Yeah. That picture was fun. And I guess the funny thing about that picture is it was on the last peak of, I think there's 9 that you have to hit for the true like Prezi Traverse. And so you can see a lot of those mountains in the background, which is kind of cool to be like, oh man, I just sort of moved over all of that terrain. But there's also still about like 3 miles to run to get from there to the car. So
it wasn't over. Yeah.
It wasn't quite over just yet, but I did run into some folks who were kind enough to snap a few photos, and yeah, it was fun.
Awesome.
It was tons of fun.
Well, congratulations. That's
thank you.
It's your biggest run yet this year. Do you have a time?
I have a time. I think even more than the time, I have a genuine just like lack of care about the time too, which is great because initially I had a time goal, and I thought about that and decided it was to beat Coach Friend as a 30-year-old, which like only would have led to massive disappointment for a number of reasons. He's
a pretty damn good runner, and he was 30 years old, which is a great age to be a runner.
He was just starting out, which is the difference. So I actually probably have more experience than 30 or 31-year-old Coach Friend. But one thing he has is like an insane downhill. So like very fast, very confident, and also a 31-year-old version versus my more risk-averse Fortissimo in one. Just not a chance, right? So then I had a more conservative like estimate, about an hour over that, and I finished, I like to say it as a percentage, about 20% over that. So
that sounds great. We celebrate all systems of measurement here. So by that system of measurement, we award you one, maybe not faster, but farther than a Tom Bosworth mile. It
was more than a Tom Bosworth mile. It was the tally ended up at 21, a little bit over 21 miles, 9,000 and a little bit of elevation gain. I think those are slightly inflated. I think they're probably down a little bit, but it's the right ballpark. But more important than any of the stats is just it was a great day out there. Saw like a bunch of varied terrain. You go up through the woods, you pop out above the tree line, and then you just like stay there for like 14 miles as you go along the range.
That's a long time.
And it's insane. It's like it's a really special place. It's I don't think there's any terrain like that on the East Coast, other than that's like quite like the Presidential Range.
Wow.
That gets above tree line, alpine zone, and just stays there. So it got super foggy as I was going up Mount Washington. And then as I came down on the other side, it just sort of like opened up, and that's by like a hut called the Lakes of the Clouds, going up to Monroe, and it just like opened up and was sunny and beautiful. And that was like a favorite part of the run for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
The Monroe Doctrine portion of the Presidential Traverse.
Oh, very good. Yeah. So that comes up to Mount Monroe.
Yeah. Don't ask me any questions on what the Monroe Doctrine was.
Well, no, that goes from Lakes of the Clouds, Washington, to the lakes up to Mount Monroe, and that was And my favorite version of Mississippi Half Step Alive from I think it must have been that 77 Englishtown, New Jersey show, which we can get the date and provide it to our dear listeners. But yeah, that like sort of came on at that time too on my Presidential Traverse playlist, and it was just a special moment. You know, it's what like it's all about when I'm doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. That sounds very special, and that's an epically precise identification of which Grateful Dead show that version of what was it, Mississippi Half Step, Uptown.
Yeah.
Toodeloo.
But,
well, that's amazing. This sounds great. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I guess the last thing, just in terms of the race report, would be I misjudged and thought Mount Eisenhower was Mount Pierce, which would have been my final mountain.
Yeah.
So like once I realized the mistake, I just hated Eisenhower. And also
I hate Ike.
It got me thinking like, wait, like Eisenhower, like which one is not like the other? Like there's all these old school presidents and then Eisenhower. Like this is like, what was this mountain? What did this mountain used to be?
Did they forget to name a mountain, or was it like a post World War II thing?
I think it was a post World War II thing, and it used to be called Mount Pleasant.
What's wrong with President Pleasant? Why did he get his mountain taken away?
I wonder when they named the presidentials. It got me to thinking like that. Then got me to thinking when did they name the presidentials altogether? But I didn't go so far as to then Google that question.
Well, maybe we have some historian listeners who can write into the mailbag and answer this week's trivia question for a possible prize. May or may not be repurposed baby items, but there's a good chance that it will be.
Yeah, our listeners came for some recce on the Presidential Traverse, and they left with just some additional research to do.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of extra work that comes along with just trying to casually listen to this podcast.
It's an active listening sort of thing. You don't just get to passively partake in this. You actually have to correct our mistakes and do the legwork that we did not.
This is the Power Motion Picnic Hour.
It does look like we're just about out of time, so I hope we got to everything.
Onward.
This is the Power Motion Picnic Hour, your favorite of the few, with a mile of opinions that we'll gladly share with you. This is the Power Motion Picnic Hour, you deserve nothing less. The Power Motion Picnic Hour, sometimes a special guest. Say your name, special guest.
I hate Ike.
This is the Power